Okay. All right, here we go. Okay. So we have a lot to cover today. Why is this not? Oh, I might not be on the right slides. Oh no, we are. Okay. Um, don't look, don't look. Okay, here we go. Um, but so some of you guys have started. Actually, Auburn, are you on week 3? Is that right?
Um, yes, yeah, that's right. Week three.
Yeah. And Tori just started. And Ticey, did you just start? I think so.
Yeah, yeah, I just
And Corey's
started.
got a little bit, but this is all the stuff you guys got coming for you, you know? Overall, Auburn, as far as the miles go, have you been hitting like the total miles? Have you paid attention to that at all?
Yeah, like I said, the last long run was like 6 miles, so I've been following that.
Okay, sweet. Awesome. Awesome. Um, but today we're going to talk about heart rate zones and stuff and understanding your heart rate because it is the best way of making sure that most people who start working with me don't want to be injured while they're running because it is like ridiculous is like whatever 80% of runners get injured in a year. It's kind of like crazy. Compared to like even the NFL is way lower than that. Isn't that weird? Because we always hear about how many NFL players are injured. But anyways, so one way of doing that is making sure that your training intensity is at a level that's not going to be breaking your body down too much. Of course, it is breaking your body down. That's how you become stronger and faster and all this stuff. That's why we work out is to break it down and build it back up. But there's so many components that go to that. So, and my training plans obviously are based off of heart rate zones. So there's 4 different ways that the world has come up with figuring out your training zones or your heart rate training zones. So we're going to talk about those, and I'm going to mostly talk about the one that I think you guys should be using. Oh, this is that. Um, so, well, I guess this is kind of what I just said, right? So we want you to set your heart rate zones, start training your heart rate zones, and knowing that the biggest reason is for the injury prevention behind it, um, and preventing overtraining. And mid run, I'm going to give you other techniques rather than just like looking at your watch. There is a lot of factors that go into it, but even giving yourself grace. We all got girls on here, so or women on here. So the time of month will kind of play into this. So you need to like just be aware of that stuff and give yourself grace when you're like, oh my gosh, my heart rate's super high. And then either you just started your period or you're going to start it real soon, very likely. One of the guys that I worked with earlier today, his heart rate was ridiculous high this morning on his run, like without me. He just came in and was talking to me about it. And he's an ultra guy, so he runs far and often in the mountains. But he also has like a baby. And his like, I'm like, dude, how much did you sleep? You know, he's like, oh yeah, over the weekend it was his birthday and he was partying a little bit and is going to bed at the same time as kids like waking up and stuff like that. So I'm sure that had a key to play with it. But if you were really listening to your body, you would listen to the heart rate. And like when it's high, that's your body like trying to tell you like we need to recover more, you know, instead of like, oh, I feel fine and look down and you're like 185, what the, you know. So it's a good way of listening to your body and making sure we don't have any um, further issues. So 4 different methods. The first one is the generic 220 minus your age. Have you guys heard of this? That is supposedly what your max heart rate is. So I guess I should back up. But in using rate zones, they're based off of your max heart rate. So you need to find your max heart rate. So the easiest way is just 220 minus your age. So let's say you're 30, so your heart rate's supposed to be able to get up to 190. But that is very simple but super inaccurate with like uh all of the athletes I work with, which I don't really work with like normal people, right? If you are running, you're not completely normal. But so maybe that works for like the general population, but it does not work for like any of my athletes. So, but knowing that's what a lot of because your watches and all that stuff go off of some sort of formula and I don't have them all figured out. I don't know what they all do, but some of them could just be age based. So if you put your age in your watch, then it tells you, okay, then your max heart rate's this, and then sets up your zones from there. So I don't love that one. but that happens often. The next one, this one is way better. As far as when I start like one-on-one coaching somebody, especially if they're not local, then I use this formula first. So your max heart rate is 120 minus your age, and then it plays in your resting heart rate. So athletes usually have a lower resting heart rate. And so then that plays into like the overall how hard your heart can be in the health and the condition of your heart. So if we use and I'll resend this to you guys so you can like watch it, or you can like jot it down right now. But so 120 minus your age comes up with supposedly your max heart rate, but then this is your resting heart rate. So then your target rate is going to be your resting heart rate plus that 120 minus your age, and then divide it by the intensity that you want. So like 60% should be pretty easy. And then that gives you that number. So like in this case, and the guy is still the 30-year-old, but now we incorporated a 55 resting heart rate, which do you guys know how to figure out your resting heart rate? Your watch probably tells it to you. But if you don't like have the setting or whatever on your watch, then you really need to like actually count it, ideally on your throat, for a whole minute when you wake up first thing in the morning when you're chilled. So you can't wake up to your screaming kids. You can't wake up to your alarm clock that startled you. And then literally count it for a whole minute, and then that would give you your resting heart rate. Or just look at your watch if your watch tells you it. Okay. So this 30-year-old had a resting heart rate of 50. And then zone 2 is usually 60 to 70% of their max heart rate. I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit. So then that means for this person, their heartbeat would be in between 136 and 150. With you guys who have already been kind of using heart rate zone training, what do these numbers mean to you? Do you feel like they feel higher, low, or something? Or is that kind of like where you're at? Not saying that you have to be 30, just what's your thoughts of trying to keep your heart rate in between 136 and 150? Anybody?
I think it's a little bit hard. My watch is always like buzzing, like, oh, your heart rate's too high. And then like in the like warm up phase, I like have to walk in order to keep it low enough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's like normal. And then you're like bugged by your watch beeping at you the whole time.
A little bit. I mean, I feel like I kind of got used to it a little bit, but I
Cool.
have to keep constantly looking at it. So I mean, I'm just interested in your trick to stop looking at your watch so much.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I mean, it does take some getting used to, like, and how you said, like, it's probably not as bad as when you first start, but when you first start, you have no clue, like, what's going on. And so it would be beeping at you even more. But that's awesome. So then the next test is a field test, and this is to actually like find out like really what your max heart rate is. I'm going to talk about lactic acid testing here in a second, but when I do that in my gym, I often do get the person to a 10, which means on a rate of perceived exertion, 10 is like max, they're done. So and then I often consider that their max heart rate. But this is another way of doing it, is doing a field test. So, not super fun if you're not somebody who likes to run really hard. Some of us like zone 2. Some of us like to run really hard. So depending on where you're at, but like make sure you warm up thoroughly, and then you run as hard as you can for 2 to 3 minutes on a flat surface, and then you take note of where your heart rate achieves. But I would also add that you would have to probably do that like 4 times, and then recover, and then go really, really fast, and then recover, and then progressively they might get faster. This other one here's an example of what one of my athletes did. So they did a good warm up, and they actually ran to a hill, because I was like, try to run up a hill for a minute. So then this was them running up a hill and then walking back down, running up a hill, walking back down. So you can see that like the third and fourth, they probably died. But the third wasn't quite as there. So their max, and then this tells us her max was 172, you know? And then also these was the zones that was just already pre-calculated in their watch. And so they hit that like top one for 15 seconds, which is really good for somebody who's not training for 100 meters. And so, yeah, so that's another way of doing it. If you don't like 3 to 4 minutes on flat, like seems harder. Some people like shorter intervals, but then just add the hill to it. Do you guys, you'll have interval training in the program. Um, but how do you guys feel about intervals? But they won't be this high. They shouldn't be at max. PS. But do you guys like intervals? Or you like steady?
I like steady.
Yeah.
Intervals scare me.
Intervals scare you. Yeah. That's awesome. Anyway, so that's another way to find out your max. And then once you have your max heart rate, so that's like 3 ways so far, right? Then once you find your max heart rate, like what does that mean, right? So then this is your max. And so zone 1 is usually calculated as 50 to 60% of your max. Zone 2, 60 to 80 or 70. And then zone 3, 70 to 80. You get it. Okay. I don't know if this is in the way. Is this in the way? If I move this over here. But I think this is kind of what Auburn was asking more of, like the reasoning behind it. Okay. So zone 2 that feels too easy. My first question would be to make sure that you actually have your zones set correctly, because, and the next slide, I'll kind of talk about how it might feel too. But so like generically speaking, that should be like 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. So if you did set your zones based off of a heart rate max and you have it set on 60 to 70, but then it still feels super easy, I'll talk more about that in the next slide. But ideally, we spend a lot of time in the easy zone, a lot of time meaning like 70, 80%, but we do still spend time here and here. I'm going to talk about the lactate threshold. In my plans, I call it recovery. So this could be your walking, and that's actually totally fine, like 50 to 60%. If you can't stay there without at it like a slow enough jog, then walk. Like that's okay. But the zone 1 recovery stuff really shouldn't be that long. Like your warm up, like 3 to 5 minutes, right? So even if you're just walking for 3 to 5 minutes, because if you start jogging at all and it gets above 60%, then you need to slow back down. Then that's okay to walk in the recovery, like zone 1 warm up kind of period. And then your zone 2, we're going to spend like a chunk of, and I mean, what I mean by a lot of time, like a chunk of your miles during the week are at zone 2, but then you still need to spend some time at zone 3 and zone 4 to push yourself up there. And there's really like, even if you weren't training for an endurance event, there's so much research on the benefit of like spending even 10 minutes a week on that for anti-aging and just like living a healthier life. You do feel like you're going to die, but it's really actually really good for your heart to do intervals at and I'm talking like thresholds, not max. Max is a whole nother ball game. But so there's a purpose to spend in each of the zones. Explained out right there, right? But as a half marathoners, you don't need to spend very much time at zone 5. Okay, that's more for like sprinters. And then I'm only going to talk about this for a second because my gold standard way of doing it is lactic acid testing. There really aren't too many places that do lactic acid testing. When I was at the hospital, I worked at the hospital for 17 years doing sports performance kind of stuff. And there I did VO2 testing. But when I jumped ship and started being able to do it on my own, I decided to do lactic acid instead. Because at the VO2, kind of, in my opinion, kind of gives you like a badge of honor, tells you your number, and it's cool, which is cool, but it doesn't give you as much as like, hey, now here's your number and now go train with it, versus my lactic acid test. So lactic acid is always just in your body and it's just always flushing back out. But as you start going faster, it's going to accumulate more, it's going to make more, and it's going to accumulate more, meaning it's not flushing it out as much. And then once you hit a certain level, it just spikes. And that's level that. And so we call that threshold, is right when it's a 4. Okay. When it hits that, then it spikes real quick. But in endurance training, we want to be able to push that number back. Actually, I'll just show you. I think I have a chart here. So we want to be able to push that back so that you're going at a faster pace. So see right here, they're going at like a 9:15 or 8:45 before it started accumulating. And then the threshold is actually at this 4. So zone 2 is really, they got a lot of zone 2. Zone 3 is going to be harder. This is going to be like race pace though, for at least a 10K. Some people can hold zone 3 for a half. And then zone 4, you're not going to be able to hold on for very long, but you should be able to hold like maybe a 5K-ish. And then this is more like 100 meters, 400 meters, something like that. And so that's the idea with that, is that the lactic acid, you see these numbers, they're just really low. And then as you train in zone 2, a lot of zone 2 and a little bit of zone 3, then that just keeps pushing this back so that the pace gets faster while your heart rate is right here, stays low, right? This person's like in between in a zone 2, he's at 166, and then got up to 167 for the zone 4. So that's the goal. But if we went off of their max heart rate, so this person's max heart rate was 180. I guess I didn't actually do this, but I haven't done the math on this like particular example, because when you do a lactic acid test, then you're just going to go off of these numbers. You're not going to go off of a max heart rate, and they probably don't exactly line up. But when you don't have amazing tests like lactic acid tests, you try to do the best that you can with what you have. So that's going to be more of this one, right? So we're going to start with this. But then if you feel like that's not really working, we are going to talk about breathing, okay? So what would make you feel like it's how? Auburn said that she feels like she has to walk during the one, and I feel like Tycee has told me she feels like she's dying at some points. so there, I got 5 different
Thanks, Dana.
Is that not the words he used?
Yeah, but you don't have to tell everyone.
They're all friends here. You should have heard what I said about you before you jumped on, but that's fine. We weren't recording at that time.
Yeah, thanks.
So breathing. There's the talk test. So hopefully you guys have heard, like, during zone 2, you should be able to hold a whole conversation without gasping. So Auburn, when you are rocking and saying that your heart rate, like when you're in that zone 2 and your heart rate is, your watch is beeping at you, telling you it's too high, do you think you could be having like a whole conversation at that pace?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So try, I don't know, like if you're running by yourself, you're like, how do I figure this out? But there is,
Yeah.
if you can sing, you're probably in zone 1. So you shouldn't be like singing, but you should be able to like have a conversation if you had a running friend like with you. But then zone 3 would be more short phrases. Like sometimes when you have a running partner, one of them is really good at talking the whole freaking time, and the other one just says shortly, yeah, good, okay, yeah, that's funny, kind of comments. They're probably in zone 3. And the other one's in zone 2, just jabbing away. So it's really actually nice to have a running friend that is in zone 2 while you're here. But then you're also dying and trying to keep up with them. But anyways, so that's one of the ways, is just being aware, like the talk test, how much you're talking, and then kind of get shallow this. So if you're at zone 2 and you're not able to hold a full conversation, you're probably not really at zone 2. So your zones are probably off. And at zone 3, if you can sing a song, you're probably not really at zone 3 kind of stuff. Other ideas that have become more popular recently is like nasal and mouth breathing. So nasal breathing, I have some of my athletes can hold a 6-minute mile with their mouth shut. Insane. But they practice nasal breathing like a lot. Nasal breathing, I just call it with your mouth shut, because I'm not very good at shutting my mouth, as you can imagine. But so having your mouth shut, meaning you're just breathing through your nose, you should be able to breathe through your nose if you're on a zone 2. So then that's another thing for you, Auburn, with your watch beeping at you. Are you holding a pace that you can keep your mouth shut? And then you haters of intervals. So on your interval, it should be hard. You should not be able to talk in full sentences and stuff like that. But then in the recovery in between, try to do your nasal breathing. So I do in my gym, I do a decent amount of treadmill training with athletes, of course, because I got a treadmill, it goes really fast and all this stuff. But in between each of them, then I try to tell them, like, close your mouth. And like literally, like right when you get off, you're going to have to do some in and out. But as you're full recovery, before you start your next interval, you should be able to breathe like steadily through your nose, because you should be in a zone 2, if not zone 1, in between your intervals. Okay. So that's another option. We got 3 more of these though. And belly and chest breathing. So with my girls, I always like to just think about your bra strap, that, or not strap, band that goes around your, on your rib cage. So always like push it out and push it in. So that's like using more of your diaphragm rather than your chest. Your chest is going to like lift your shoulders and stuff like that when you inhale that way, versus if you're expanding your rib cage against your bra band, then that is more of the belly breathing that we want you to do. So then that's another thing to also do in between the intervals, is to try to close you down. So then try to breathe in your nose and out your mouth, but also expand against your band of your rib cage or your bra. So it's an easy way to explain it to women. Or a lot of people do the rhythmic breathing with running, because running is so rhythmic, So then there's different ways that I have like listed on there, like inhale and exhale to each step, or vice versa. But as you get going faster, it increases. Okay, so that can also kind of help you see what zones you're at. And then the biggest thing is like whenever you can, like, control your breathing. The more you control the breathing, which is definitely a skill. New runners are going to have a hard time controlling their breathing. So it is a like learned skill for sure, is being able to control your breathing while you're running, right? And or in between, like if you're on race day and you come to the aid station and you need to gulp down some water, like to gulp it down and not choke. You guys all experience that. Then that's also being able to like control your breathing either while you're choking, because oh crap, or before, so that you don't actually choke, right? I think that's all on breathing. You guys good with breathing? We have questions about breathing, or maybe I should wait till the questions at the end, because I think this is just one more slide. The other thing that's in the training plan is strength training. And yes, I have programs that do just strength training for runners, but I just wanted to at least give you some guidelines on what I would recommend that you do on those days. So your goal is to do some sort of strength training twice a week. You really don't need more than that with how much you're going to be running. And these are some suggestions of what to do. So like if you had a lower body day and then a glute core day and then a next upper body day and some mobility, like split it up like that, or split up any of these 4 sections as you want throughout the week. But squats, deadlifts, lunges, let me know if you have questions on any of these. I can kind of explain to them. So a lot of them, like, you don't need to be at the gym. You can do these in the mountains where Corey is, lucky, or anywhere. You don't necessarily need to be doing it with a ton of weight when you are in the final stages of your race training. If this was off season, then yeah, you'd be loading it up and doing a lot harder or stronger kind of stuff, would be better. But those are ideas for that. And I think, yes. And then we're going to, I do need to remember that before our next Zoom, when you come on our next Zoom, you need to have on your phone a slow-mo video of you running. And then I'm going to have you play it back and stop it at certain points and screenshot it. And we're going to talk about like how your running gait looks. So make sure you have that. I'll be posting that on the app too, but like make sure you have that between now and it looks like August 12th. And now let me know. We covered heart rate zones, like why they matter, how to find yours, and then breathing. Or also you could use your breathing instead, and the strength training stuff. What questions you guys got? This is your time to shine.
If we calculate our heart rate zone and it's different, can we adjust it on like the training apps that shows up on our watch as like a different zone too?
Yes. It does depend on what watch you have, but which what do you have? I forget.
I have the Apple Watch.
The Apple Watch. I definitely don't have that one memorized, but in your, it's usually like under your name and your settings, then you can change. When I do, you can change either, the easiest way would be to change your max heart rate, and then most of them automatically calculate the percentages from there. So that's an option. Though when I do lactic acid tests here, then I make their watch go off of their threshold number, because we for sure know that. So if your watch also has a threshold spent time, then after you do the math, your threshold is the top of zone 3. So you could use that too. So you could use, like, put in your correct max heart rate or put in your correct thresholds. If it doesn't let you do the whole zones. Like Garmin does not let you do the whole zones. It does a percentage. Coros lets you do the whole zones. And I can't really remember about Apple. But
Okay, and are you putting this in your
one
Apple
of
Watch or in Training Peaks? Like, where am I changing this?
Oh, you probably could in Training Peaks. I didn't even think about that, because the people I coach, that's the first thing I do is I change theirs in Training Peaks. You could in Training Peaks under your profile, and it would let you change all of them. So yeah,
Okay.
do that. Good point. Good point.
Okay,
You
Dana,
did-
since you outed me in front of everyone.
Okay.
So yes, I feel like I'm dying when I'm running. How is it better to just die and run your miles, or is it better to slow down, not die, and take an hour and a half?
Right now, when you're starting and your biggest goal is to achieve an hour, half marathon in 10 weeks, I would still work on the breathing part, like not dying, at
Okay.
least for 2 of your runs. And then if you want
Okay.
to die on one, that's okay, but don't have every single one of your runs at the dying pace, because you're not going to build up enough mitochondria and all the stuff that helps you sustain it for 13 miles. But if it's the sake of time and all that stuff, and it's okay to push yourself, like, but not on every single run. I'll put in our chat, like I have a blog post on, I can't remember what it's called, but and sometimes when I test lactic acid people, I can tell that I call it like balls to the walls. They've just been training at balls to the walls for like too long. But it doesn't really help build their aerobic base. So if they're trying to do like a 5K, that's okay. But if you're trying to do a half, you need more of the aerobic time. Does that make sense? But also not what you want to hear.
Thank you.
Do you have other questions? Okay, we'll call that good. I'll try to get this to record up and upload in the right spot, but way to go, girls. Keep it up.
Thanks, Dana.
Yep, we'll see ya.